You guys ready for a massacre of a rotation? Because we're about to have a massacre of a rotation over here. Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. This time we are covering the 2018 to 2019 season rotation. And oh boy, all of X and Y goes, which means we have a lot of sets going away here. I think it's 6 sets and a absolute boatload of promos going here as well. I am pretty sure every single XY promo goes away with this, because with the format being Sun and Moon on, it makes sense that all of the X and Y promos go, and I don't think I have seen any lists in Sun and Moon to like Celestial Storm playing any of the promo stuff. Granted, promo stuff doesn't generally tend to be that good, but there's some things like the reprints of Magearna and Volcanion that would have absolutely seen play if they were still legal. So I'm pretty sure this all goes, and that is an awful lot to talk about, let's be honest. So, to go briefly in order, I have a lot of stuff down the bottom here to go into, so I don't want to spend too much time on this bit. But we do have Breakthrough going. This was a really good set to play when it came out. We had 2 sessions in this, because there's just a ton of cards that we wanted to use here. So, this one was really good. We had Breakpoint, which was also a very good set. Had a lot of good stuff at the time. It was a bit of a shame that Trevenant kind of mod this one a bit, but still tons of good cards in there to speak on. Generations was a bit of an in-between thing, mostly for playing goofy stuff, but there were a couple of cards in here which made things very, very strong, we shall say, and a couple of good reprints as well. Then we got to Fates Collide, which was one of my favourite sets of the time actually, because I got to play with a really fun double Delphox deck, which was great, but lots of cool stuff in here as well. Then we had Steam Siege, which was good, but maybe not quite as crazy as we wanted it to be. I don't know, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but it's mostly just like one very strong deck, a couple of other things to make a different one available, and then some really dumb bits here and there which should not have been reprinted, but it is what it is. And Evolution's like one of the worst sets of all time for my thing. It's certainly not the least playable set ever. I mean, we have been using the Mewtwo from this set for a very long time, but my god, I hate this set. It just, the card template is awful here, so glad to see that go. And then, like I said, an absolute ton of promo stuff, but a lot of this we don't really need to speak on because it's either reprints or they weren't very good to begin with. So I will mention stuff as we go, as and when it becomes important. So the way I've structured this is we do have some stuff which is staying in the format. We'll go over that briefly. There is exactly one card, Box Grit, which as you can see from Team Up is going to come back in the next format, but is not available immediately. So we will have a little bit of time without this. Then I've split this into, because there's just so many Pokemon and stuff to talk about here, I've split this into what is relevant in the current meta as far as cards go, what items and energy and trainers and all of that fun stuff goes away, and then all of the other Pokemon which we've either played or have historically been relevant, these will all get spoken about as well. 1 or 2 of these could maybe move up, and honestly I have probably missed something. I've already had to include the Raichu as part of this stuff here, so if I've missed anything I do apologize, but as you can see there are like over 1,000 cards here to look through, so there's a very high chance that something has just gone astray. So what aren't we losing? Crushing Hammer stays in, unfortunately, because it's in Sun and Moon. This card never goes away, I think, from here, so I might just stop mentioning it from here on out. But yeah, this card stays, bit of a shame. Sun and Moon also reprinted Energy Retrieval, which is very important. I think this was also printed later in, I forget which one, it might have been Shining Legends? But this, or Crimson Invasion, something around that sort of bit. Either way, it's staying in format for several reasons. Energy Switch got 2 printings, but Celestial Storm was the most recent one. Enhanced Hammer got printed in Guardians Rising. Great Ball got printed in Shining Legends. I think it gets another print pretty soon as well. Max Potion got printed in Guardians Rising. Pokemon Catcher, I think, also doesn't stay forever, but it stays during most formats from here on out. Sun and Moon is the latest print of that. Ultra Ball got printed in a couple of sets, but Sun and Moon is the one I've gone for here. Fisherman just got reprinted in Celestial Storm, so it stays in. Judge, I think, got printed in Forbidden Light, so that stays in. And Pokemon Fan Club was printed in Ultra Prism, so that is also available. Energy-wise, Rainbow Energy got printed in Sun and Moon, and then Double Colorless Energy also got printed in Gen 7 sets as well. So, yeah, they all stay in, and all of these, almost all of these are useful for different reasons. Fisherman, maybe not so much, because the decks that would play Fisherman are going to play other forms of retrieval that are item-based, so this might not see a ton of play, but it's still a very cool card to have around, and there are some decks that would definitely want to have this. On to the meta-relevant Pokemon here. You might be surprised to see Clefairy here, because you've probably never seen this one played in anything, but for the 2 weeks that Celestial Storm was actually a format in Standard, this actually did see considerable testing, because it was a way for Rayquaza decks to have a single prizer that could beat other Rayquaza. And since Rayquaza was the boogeyman threat that came out of Celestial Storm, people were desperately looking for something that could potentially put a stop to that and win the mirror, basically. This was something that could do it, so it did actually see play. I don't think it topped at all at Worlds, but it was a consideration for the whole time. Starmie was the all-star, literally, in Greninja Break, because this let you recycle the energy, so you could do more discarding and stuff like that. Also saw play in Volcanion for the same sort of reason, discarding more fire energy so that you could get more bonus damage out. Also helped that it was water typing, so it was able to use Brooklet Hill as well. So, yep, absolute amazing card, one of the best that Evolution's had, if not the best long term. Mr. Mime was actually not meta, but the more that I've played this format, the more that I think people were stupid for not including it. This is the last time we see this version of Bench Barrier, where all bench damage in general gets prevented. From here on out, the bench barriers that we have only prevent the opponent's Pokemon from damaging you, so there's no Earthquake protection at this point. Not necessarily that relevant most of the time, but I use this with Weavile's Rule of Evil to prevent my Guru from taking damage on the bench as well. So this really should have been meta though. Spread decks were incredibly good in this format, so I'm stunned that more people didn't play it. Espeon EX was incredible for all of the second half of its lifespan. Miraculous Shine being able to devolve all of the opponent's Pokemon, especially when the HP disparity between Basic and Stage 1 GX, for example, was so high. It just made it so that your spread deck could basically take several prizes and key knockouts in one turn. Absolutely insane for a single energy. Mewtwo, this did get replaced by Deoxys, but Deoxys has less HP, so it's a bit awkward that it's in a threshold number. This was the anti-Buzzwole card. Any deck that was playing DCE could tech this in, and it was very, very powerful. The Mew itself was pretty good for a lot of stuff. Both Mews are going here, so this one could copy basic Pokemon attacks that you had on your bench, so long as you could pay for them, and the Mew EX would copy any Pokemon in play, so long as you could pay for it. So this one was really good in Zoroark decks to counter Buzzwole GX, and this one was really good in a bunch of decks, but especially stuff like Malamar, where you could accelerate to it and effectively copy your GX Pokemon instead, which was really good. Watch and Learn Sudowoodo, fantastic counter energy card in the end. I actually completely forgot about this for a little bit, but yeah, lets you steal Riotous Beating from the opposing Zoroark once they've used it, and just KO them, which was really, really good. So, super strong card by the end of this. Octillery, Abyssal Hand is always an amazing ability. We see this with Bibarel nowadays. So, yeah, this card was always destined for greatness. It saw play right until the end. So, super, super good card. It does eventually get replaced in 2020. Gallade goes, which is a bit of a shame. Because this is a really good split Evo for Gardevoir, but it was also fantastic in its own decks, and it was really good with just about anything, really. Gallade Octillery was an amazing deck, Gallade with Zoroark was really good, and yeah, Sensitive Blade, strong attack for DC, just solid stuff. Giratina Break, I could have mentioned this down the bottom, but it was specifically played a lot in the big tournaments for anti-Greninja Break as the thing, because Greninja Break was so oppressive to a lot of decks if it got set up that they just included a hard counter to this. Notably, Tord actually won at least one of his ICs playing this in Zoroark, so yeah. Manaphy, I do remember seeing this a little bit. Maybe it's past its prime as a meta card at this point because it is just a bit frail. But I do remember seeing this in some water box decks all the way up to, I think it was like Ultra Prison. It was still being played, so yeah, having Zero Retreat on your water energy laden Pokemon, really, really strong. We're going to get a lightning type version of this coming up, which is a bit bulkier, so that should be really strong as well. Garbodor is not leaving, the Trash Launch one is not leaving, but its partner in crime, or in grime I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? Whatever. Its partner is going in Garbatoxin. This means that we don't have universal ability lock anymore. We have Alola Muck that can lock basic Pokemon, and technically, I suppose, if you just keep attacking with it, we have Chimecho that could stop these Pokemon from coming into play in the first place. But we won't have any way of stopping evolution single prizes from doing stuff. And that's kind of cool in a way, to be honest. And not so cool in others, but we'll get there later. Zoroark and Zoroark Break go away here, so this is the competition for Dawnwing's Necrozma. And also just sometimes was played as a one-of in Zoroark GX decks. Stand-in is a really good trait to have, and let's be honest, Mind Jack is a fantastic attack to have as well. The Zoroark Break, if you were playing Darkness Energy, was really good because copying one of the opponent's attacks is always going to be quite strong as well. So yeah, especially when you don't have to pay for it. So there you go. Galvangel is being noted up here because Rainbow Road, as we'll get to later, was actually a deck all the way up until basically the end of the format, so, or the season even. It was played in NAIC as late as that. So yeah, being dual type gave that deck extra damage, and it was really good. Cobalion was often used as a counter energy card for dealing with Gardevoir decks, so this was very prevalent throughout Passimian decks especially, but any of our decks that were playing counter energy would always consider this card, so yeah. The Frogadier and Greninja and Greninja Break, like all of these are going here. Technically the Bubble Froakie's going as well, but it's not the most used thing in the end. By the time we get the 70 HP one, which we already have, obviously. Water Duplicates probably wouldn't be used at this point for the Greninja GX, because you do want to evolve into the Frogadiers in order to get the damage out, but, I mean, you could, so it's still there. And Greninja was actually played even in Greninja GX focus decks, because Shadow Stitching was just that powerful. We didn't play it, but I built Zoroark Greninja, and this was part of it, just because it's so good. Giant Water Shuriken also for the break in the dedicated deck was absurd. And yeah, good riddance to this, really. It loses to itself and almost nothing else. It's insane. I mentioned the Rainbow Force Xerneas before. 120 HP does kind of suck, but at least a Dark Resistance gives it a way of surviving the attack from Zoroark at the very least. So there is that, and this thing can hit one-shot numbers even without Skyfield being available. So yeah, it was played until the end. Complicated deck to play though. And then we have the Geomancy Xerneas is going as well. This also saw play because of Xerneas Break, which is going too. Lifestream was a very powerful attack, being able to do damage for every energy that you have in play, and Geomancy was a way of getting a ton of those energy out. So yeah, I did see Xerneas Break decks even as far as like Forbidden Light and stuff as well, so very cool. Yveltal Break did top 32 worlds. I probably should have put the Oblivion Wing Yveltal up here as well, the old one, just like me, but it's down the bottom. Kind of forgot to put it up here, to be honest. But Yveltal Break's Baleful Knight was pretty strong if you could ever get to it. 120 damage and 30 to each of the opponent's Pokemon that has a damage counter already on them is ridiculously high output, to be honest. It is Pepper likened it to a GX attack, and I can definitely see why. This thing is insane. The problem is charging it. But yeah, top 52 at Worlds, can't really argue with that. And then finally, both Volcanians are going here. Funnily enough, I think we just effectively had this card reprinted in Standard pretty recently as well, which is very funny. But we don't have the EX to go with it, so we don't have Steam Up as a thing. This was also seen in Rainbow Road because of the dual typing as well, so kind of funny to see it in more than just its own deck. But Ho-Oh Salazzle will lose a fair bit without this in the deck as well, because you just don't have access to the sky-high numbers with Ho-Oh at this point. It's capped out at like 210, so yeah. Trainer cards and stuff. It's not just items, but yeah, this is not all meta relevant, but this is all the ones that I could see being like useful in any way. Body Buddy Rescue was honestly one of the worst cards that ever saw competitive play, but before Rescue Stretcher came out, this was the only way that we had to pick up a Pokemon directly from the discard to the hand. So it did see play, it was used in Gyarados decks, and Persimmon in its first iteration. So yeah. Captivating Pokepuff saw some play in certain control-type decks. It was never that common, but it's a devastating effect. If the opponents had a ton of like Shaman and Lele and stuff like that in their hand, they don't get the effects because it's not on their turn, so it's gross. Devolution Spray, I'm noting this because I used it quite a bit, but it was played. There were a couple of, like, Alakazam lists sometimes played it. Foritra stuff was very fun with this, and yeah, I would probably use this with like Salazzle or something as well if I was going down that route. Pretty cool. Energy Reset is a card for the next set, actually, which is a good job it rotated, because there is an FTK that can get done with this, thanks to an unknown card that can win on turn 1 if there's enough damage in play. Yeah, maybe I'll go over that at some point, but I don't exactly have the deck structure for it. But essentially, there's an FTK that you can do with attaching energy and doing damage with said energy, using this to be able to recover that energy back in order to keep doing it. It's absurd, to be honest. Evo Soda going is a bit annoying for Zoroark because it enjoyed this card a fair bit, but yeah, we have Timer Balls, so we can technically do stuff with that, especially because Apricorn Maker is a thing. So yeah, this is the guaranteed search as opposed to the coin flip one, really. Fairy Drop would have been exceptional by the end of this format when Gardevoir and Sylveon came out, because they play Great Potion, which is the same but only for active GX. This would have been really strong for that deck, because they could have healed the bench as well, so good card. Heavy Ball, shame to see a ball search card go when we've just gotten the thing that the supporter that searches ball cards, but hey, it is what it is. Not much you can do about it. We lost Level Ball before, so now we're losing this as well. Maintenance, another one of those really bad cards that saw very occasional historic play in like early builds of Archie decks. Wasn't very good, but Archie Stoys technically played this at some point. Max Elixir is a gigantic one to go. This card has been so devastating every time it's actually been playable, and yeah, anytime you can afford to do like a basic heavy deck, this card is just ridiculous. So yeah, very glad to see it go at this point. It's just too strong. Max Revive, I'm noting just because it's the last time that we ever see this card. Put a Pokemon from the discard on top of the deck is not a great effect, but if you can immediately draw the card, it's not that bad. But yeah, we never see this again, so that's why we're noting it. Professor's Letter is a painful one to lose because it means we don't have any item-based energy search until Unbroken Bonds, I think it is, when Energy Spinner comes out. So half this format doesn't even have energy search, which is kind of insane. Puzzle of Time took a long time, oh-ho, to actually get good. But eventually, when Zoroark decks started picking it up and we ended up playing around with it, it was very strong. And there's a lot of good stuff you could do with it. A lot of degenerate stuff you could probably do with it as well, let's be real. But Zoroark decks definitely love this card, so yeah, bit of a shame to lose that. Random Receiver, much more historical, to be honest. It was only really good in Gen 5, never saw any play in Gen 6, but that's just because we had so much of a draw and stuff around. And, you know, item lock, Vileplume was a thing, so yeah, whatever. Red card, we do lose basically all of our hand disruption outside of Judge, this is definitely one that I am not sad to see go away. We didn't really use it. I think I used it exactly once, and it wasn't because the card was bad, it's because it didn't tend to fit very well in a lot of stuff that we wanted to do, and we do not like playing control. We'll just be straight honest with it. This series is not really meant to be playing the degenerate, like, control BS sort of stuff, because we just want to have fun. And yeah, casual stuff does not really want to play this sort of sweaty tryhard card, let's be real. Revitalizer is a very fun one. It's a bit of a shame to lose this, but Rescue Stretcher kind of fills the goal, so it's like okay. But Decidueye decks loved this when it was available, mostly with Forest of Giant Plants, but it's still extremely good, and we still could have used this now, so shame to see it go. Revive is being noted, even though Rescue Stretcher is better, because Revive is also never coming back, as far as I know. So, the last time we ever see it is here, and yeah, just put a basic from the discard onto the bench. Pretty good. Special Charge going is going to hurt Pepper quite a bit, because he's been playing a ton of decks that play loads of Special Energy. Yeah, we never see this card come back either. The closest we get, I think, is like Urn of Vitality, I think it's called. The one for single strike energy. But yeah, special energy is extremely hard to recover from here on out. Probably for the best, to be honest, because most of the time they're broken. Super Rod going hurts me personally, because I love this card. It's also a bit of a forewarning for the 2020 format, because oh boy, are we losing a lot of stuff in recovery-wise in that set, so yeah, I'm not super happy about this one going. We do have limited replacements, but we could never quite get things in combination, which is what I want. So yeah. And finally, Town Map makes its last appearance here as well. Shuffling, like putting all the prize cards face up is fine enough, you know. There is also Team Rocket Returns, the supporter card that does this, which is also going, but this is the more important one. We do have Gladion in format though, if we want to do some prize manipulation stuff, and there's always Beast Ball if you're playing an Ultra Beast deck. You just get to look at your prizes with that, so it's kind of neat. So yeah. Supporters! Bridget is going. We do get a replacement of sorts in Professor Elf's Lecture in Lost Thunder, so we're getting a version of this back, but it can't get higher HP basics. So yeah, Bridget going means no more searching for GXs alongside your evolving basics and stuff. So yeah, this is a thing. Delinquent, another card that we never quite managed to fit in most of the decks, but oh god, was this devastating in the right messes. Stadium cards ended up not getting played for quite a long time during Sun and Moon, so it was not the most impactful for a fair while. But there was certainly combinations of things you could do involving Parallel Sizzy that makes this absolutely devastating. So, kind of good to see it go. Giovanni's Scheme is a legacy one in here. This is outclassed entirely by Professor Kukui, but it did see play on release because that 20 extra damage option was definitely worth having around. Just like I said with Tate and Liza, having extra options on your supporter card, even if it is weaker in individual options, tends to make it see play here and there. Karen came out too late. This card really never saw play in Standard, because by the time it came out, the deck it was supposed to counter had already rotated. So yeah, it was supposed to be an anti-Night March thing, and it didn't see play because Night March wasn't available anymore. Stupid card design. I still hate it to this day. Misty's Determination, the last time we ever see this card, it didn't really see much play in Standard outside of exactly Vesperquen before Energy Lotto came out. And then Energy Lotto just outclasses it, so whatever. N going away is a huge blow for disruption stuff. And basically, if you want to disrupt the opponent's hand, you play Judge or you bench a Marshadow, and that is it. Not much else to say with it. I personally think it's about time it goes, because we've played with it for so long. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of having it here, but I do understand that this kind of card is very popular with most players. I'll be interested to see how Iono ends up playing by the time we get to that stage in the game. Ninja Boy going is a bit of a shame. This sort of card is always really cool to have around. The utility of being able to swap one basic that you have in play with one from the deck is very neat. I think there's an equivalent in Thornton, I think it is nowadays. I don't remember exactly what it does, but it's like from the discard maybe, or something like that you can just like swap one of the Pokemon. It's kind of cool. I like this sort of effect. I played this a lot in Gen 3 with Swoop Teleporter, so yeah, it's just very hard to fit in as a supporter card, I think. Olympia isn't the greatest card anymore, but it is a switch card. It was very powerful when it first came out because of the prevalence of item lock, so having a supporter that could switch was very good. But nowadays we have Guzma, which is the main thing we'd play for that, and we also have Tantalizer, which has the option to switch. Doesn't do the heal, but it also can shuffle draw 5, so it's dual utility in the deck. So we don't need this anymore, really. Pokemon Santa Lady is going away until Gen 8. I think it did see some play in like Blissey in Gen 8, and honestly it hasn't seen play in a long time in this format. But it probably could have if you were really like in that sort of Zoroark v Zoroark sort of time. You could probably have survived some hits with this. I think Choice Band kind of ruins the math too much on it though, as a bit of a shame. Pokemon Ranger was really good for Seismitoad when that was available, but then Seismitoad rotated as soon as this came out, basically the set after, and it didn't see play as a result after that. But it was really, really strong the 1 or 2 times it was actually like playable, so yeah. Professor Sycamore going until research at the start of Generation 8, so we will not have as many ways of discarding with supporter cards. At the very least, we have like Sophocles, or TV Reporter I suppose, and that's about it. There is Sightseer actually coming out, which doesn't draw until 7, but lets you discard not your entire hand if you want to, so that's going to be kind of neat. Then we have Shauna going, outclassed of course by Tantalizer, but there was a time this saw play because we were that sort of desperate for extra draw stuff, so yeah, that was a sad state of affairs. Skylar, yes, this is the artwork we're using because I wasn't going to go ahead and load more cards in for this. Yeah, we don't really need this, to be honest. When it comes to the item-based search, which is most of the time what you do with this, Volkner is going to outclass this. It does search out stadiums and stuff, though, so I think some decks could have probably still used it. Whatever, it's gone. Nobody cares anymore. Team Flagrant, we do still have Plumeria that forces you to discard 2, but you can discard an energy from anywhere. But yeah, probably for the best this is going, because this weakens the stall decks a fair bit, which I am all for. They're just awful to play against. Team Rocket's Handiwork going also kind of inhibits the stall stuff very slightly, because they do end up having to play other stuff to have their wink on. It's fine to have this go. This was never like a particularly good supporter, but when you could loop it, eventually it's going to work and going to mill the opponent out. So yeah, glad to see that go. Then stadium cards, All Night Party, one of the worst stadiums ever to be honest, but there was technically a use for it if you played Hypno to put both actives to sleep. And then you could heal it with this and KO them hopefully. Never a good combo, but it's a counter stadium that was pretty benign otherwise, so there you go. Chaos Tower for the same sort of reason. There's technically a thing you could do with this with Nihilego GX. When you bench Nihilego, it does confuse and poison both actives, so if you had Chaos Tower in play pointing to you, you could actually stop that confusion poison from happening, which is pretty cool. So like, yeah, there was maybe some play you could do with it. Fairy Garden going hurts the Fairy deck stuff quite a bit. Fairy Energy giving no retreat cost is extremely strong, considering we're also losing Floatstone as well, as you can see in the corner. Parallel City, we didn't play it as much as we probably could have, but that's because like we could have played it all the freaking time if we really wanted to. We chose not to a lot of the time, I think, but yeah, Parallel was used a ton. very good against Zoroark. Zoroark is now going to have its bench just about uninhibited. Pseudo Widow's the only thing that can block one of its points at this stage, and that's kind of hard to fit into a lot of decks because it also blocks one of your bench terms. The damage reduction mattered on occasion as well, though. There are some decks that really got hurt by being 20 points weaker, so yeah, good stadium. Then Reverse Valley going is mostly a hit to Zoroark. Devoured Field is a replacement for this. It gives a buff to Dragon and Dart types on the field, but it gives a buff to all Dragon and Dart types, whereas this is single-sided, because the metal damage reduction, unless you're playing against a metal deck, obviously does nothing. So Zoroark decks did occasionally tech one copy of this to hit the 130 mark and KO all of the single prize basics. So yeah, they're going to have to give the opposing Zoroark extra damage as well now. Oh no, like big danger, right? I like Scorched Earth. We're going to get a fire-based replacement to this with Heat Factory in a little bit, which lets, I think it's in Lost Thunder actually, where you get 3 cards as the draw, but it's a Prism Stadium, so you can only play one of it. And it's just kind of there, to be honest. But I like this sort of thing, because we can then get the energy back out to this card later on, and getting extra draws is always good, so yeah. Assault Vest going on to the tool cards now. This only really saw play with Entei, but Special Energy's always been good, it's just never been the most prevalent. And once Field Blower came in, this is a bit unreliable, so yeah, it tapered off fast. Bent Spoon never really saw much play, but preventing effects of the opponent's attacks could sometimes be really good. So we're going to note it anyway. Bursting Balloon saw less play than it should have. I never quite managed to build the deck, but when Zoroark first came out, one of the first things I was going to do was play Zoroark Garbodor with Bursting Balloon, because the ability locking Garbodor could stop the opponent from doing their Zoroark stuff, but then the Bursting Balloon would drop off at the end of the turn, and you could keep doing your Zoroark stuff during your own turn. Really cool combo. Nobody ever did it. Very weird. Fighting Fury Belt going is a bit of a hit to the basic GX decks. There were many Rayquaza decks that did actually play this, so yeah, they could have done with keeping that around. Extra 40 HP on those things did kind of help them keep up, so yeah. Floatstone going is going to be a huge loss to everyone, really, because we've been relying on this for quite a long time. We have Escape Board, but that only reduces retreat by 1, so it's going to be focusing a lot more on the, let's switch this again because it's a bit quiet. Going to be a lot more focused on the single energy retreats now, so retreat cost is going to matter again. And then finally, for the main stuff here, special energies are going as well. The water, fire, and fighting type ones. The fire one isn't amazing, to be honest, because it's just a bit awkward, but we would be able to use this a fair bit more in the upcoming format, because stuff like Flareon, I'm pretty sure, discards energy, and the Blaziken is also one that could discard stuff, so like it would come up, but not as prevalent as the others. Splash Energy was fantastic for Greninja, and honestly would be really good still, because you could use this on the Quagsire deck coming up, and make sure that you get your Quagsire back if you're attacking with that, or any of your water attackers really. So yeah, would have been pretty good. Probably would have been very good for Volcanion Prison too, so yeah. And then Strong Energy, we know how good this has been every single time a fighting deck has been played. Almost always they play 4 Strong Energy. The only exception is now if you're playing Beast Ring, you might not have space like in the Buzz Garb deck. So yeah, it's there. And then we're going to try and quickfire through these because I know we're already very late into this and there's like over 60 Pokemon in this thing. So let's try and quickfire some stuff. Charizard was historically very good when it first came out. Lost access to Blacksmith and didn't see play ever since. Beedrill was notable because it was the only tool removal in the start of the 2018 format before Field Blower came out, so it was the only way you could discard off a Garbodor. Nuzzle Pikachu, the Pilachu over here, is going to get a reprint when it actually matters later, but it means that you can't use Pachirisu to energy attach to it right now, so that's a shame. The Circle Circuit Raichu was very good from its inception all the way up until Rayquaza rotated. Was super strong with Skyfield. The Golbat was a holdover, obviously. Crobat did rotate the previous season, but Sneaky Bite was still very good, so yeah, it was a historical note. The Alakazam and the Mega, as a result, were okay as when Dimension Valley was a thing, but after that it was just a bit too expensive to keep going with the stuff here, and nowadays it's too frail to even care about. The Sparking Induction Magnemite is pretty solid. It was pretty solid until Buzzwole was a thing, and then it's just like a bit difficult to justify a Lightning type Magnemite. The Magnezone was good on release, and Heavy Ball was good to search it. You couldn't Heavy Ball the new one, so if you were playing Magnezone Lightning type at this point, you could have still considered it. Gengar I'm noting because I played it as a really dumb deck in a test session and it actually worked, but it really shouldn't have because that deck was so hard to play, but it's pretty cool. There's some Spell Tag coming out in Lost Thunder that would have actually worked very well with this, so yeah, good card. Shame we lose it here. Marowak is something that was really good against Seismitoad, but it came out just a little bit too late in the lifespan to be strong here. Kingdra was pretty good with Magnezone. We didn't play that version because it was basically the same as the version I played when Magnezone first came out, but it just traded the discarding of Pikachu EX for consistent damage every turn, just a little bit less overall. Scizor and Mega Scizor were actually really good, but we never really saw them because the best deck we could find for them was Scizor with Garbodor, and we just didn't want to play that because it was boring. So yeah. Jolteon EX actually saw play in Worlds in the Rayquaza list. There was one of them that made top 16, I think, that played one of this. So right up until the end, Flash Ray was still something that it was really good. Probably as an anti-other other Ray decks, actually, because if you got Flash Ray going, Ray had literally no answers to it, so they just scooped to you. Flareon, I'm noting because of the Flareon Magma Camera update that I played that was super fun, so definitely a very cool card. Not the strongest one out there, but we certainly made it work, so that was great. Umbreon, I don't think saw much play, but Endgame definitely did do some work in the right situations. Mega Evolutions being KO'd by it, giving up 4 prizes, really is an endgame situation, so yeah. Glaceon saw a decent bit of play because of Crystal Ray stopping evolutions from damaging it, and yeah, it was pretty good when it came up. Definitely caused some problems. Sylveon actually saw play in Worlds this year. Forget exactly which deck it was in, but it was because of Dress Up. I think it was to, right, with a Choice Band it hits Rayquaza for a one-shot, because it does 180, so I forget exactly which deck it was in, but I know we saw it, and it was very silly. Dragonite was really good with the Mega Gardevoir that we will get to later on, being able to bring Pokemon back from your discard pile so that you could discard them again with the Gardevoir, and Despair Ray for more damage was really good. Mega Mewtwo Y did see a decent bit of play until Garbodor came out, and then Trash Alliance kind of just made it obsolete because it's weak to Psychic, so you just couldn't do it anymore. Typhlosion I'm bringing up because it's a very stupid meme deck that I played in Breakthrough, and it was very funny. Not the best card out there, but extremely fun to play nonetheless. Yanmega was pretty solid on release, it and the break. If you have exactly 4 cards in the hand, you just don't pay for its attacks. So even though its attacks weren't like the absolute best, it was a 0 energy thing, it had a pretty good shell behind it. I forget exactly what caused it to stop seeing play, it was probably when Garbodor got more prevalent, but yeah, super cool card nonetheless. Wobbuffet I wanted to put in meta, to be honest, but nobody played it, just like Mr. Mime. They should have, though. This card is great. Being able to stop everything but Lele, basically, from having abilities was extremely strong. So, yeah, I think more things should have played this, especially Malamar decks could have considered this. Weavile had the same ability as Masquerain when we had access to multi-tool attached Pokemon. This was fine. I know Pepper played this at one point, so that was kind of neat. The Raikou was played with Magnezone initially, a very strong single prizer that had quite a lot of HP for its time period as well. So yeah, good stuff on that one. Lugia, for the same sort of reason, it prevented damage done to it as well, and when EXs were the main thing, it could one-shot Shaman, which was really good. The break actually gave it more initial damage against everything else as well. So yeah, pretty strong version of Magnezone for that too. Sensing a pattern here. Ralts is a Psychic type one, and that is why I'm putting it here, because we lose access to all the Psychic type Ralts, which means you cannot Mysterious Treasure for one anymore. So that takes away one avenue of Gardevoir. So yeah. Speaking on Gardevoir, both Megas are here. Brilliant Arrow was fantastic when it first came out, kind of tapered off relatively quickly, but still saw some top cuts alongside this Gardevoir. I know Joe Bernard actually did like a second place deck at some point that I tried to play, didn't work for me, so I don't know how he managed it. But yeah, infinite damage scaling, very strong, of course, and the other Mega Gardevoir being able to discard all of your coming into play powers so that they don't get gusted up and stuff was really good. Mega Salamence saw more play IRL than it ever could have in this series because we didn't spend long enough in the format after it came out, but an anti-EX Pokemon at the very end of the EX format, yeah, not long for this series, but when you've got about 2-3 months to play the card, pretty good. Does a lot of damage, so there is that. Regirock, you could have probably put this in meta, but I didn't see any decks in Celestial Storm playing it anymore, so that's why I didn't. Plus 10 damage to each of your fighting Pokemon, excluding Regirocks, is still very, very good. So yeah, even with Diancie, you just pair them together, and it's great. So fighting types losing a lot of their damage scaling that they've been used to in this current format. Stardust Jirachi, I really wanted to put meta, but it hasn't seen play in like 3 or 4 sets. And I think initially the problem was Decidueye, because Decidueye pinging this down was just too much for it to handle when that was big, but then Decidueye died down and it still didn't see play. So I don't know what was up with that, but Stardust is busted, so whatever. Bronzong Break couldn't see play after the Bronzong with Metal Links rotated, but this attack did see play when it first came out, just before that rotated. And this type of attack where you discard any number of energy in play and then do damage per energy to one of the opponent's Pokemon, that comes up quite a bit. There's a Raichu that's going to do it soon, there's a Starmie in current standard that does it, so yeah, noteworthy attack. Spiritomb was the progenitor to Tapu Lele. It's obviously outclassed by said Tapu Lele because Tapu Lele can move damage from anywhere. This can only move damage from the bench Pokemon around, so there are limitations to what this can do. But it was part of my endgame deck alongside the Azelf over here. Was part of a sort of endgame spread deck that I played before, so noteworthy nonetheless. Then we have Garchomp, which was very good when it came out and died immediately after rotation last season because it lost all of the fighting stuff like Corina and Focus Sash, so a little bit of a shame there. But it was very powerful for its time. Turbo Assault was a really good attack to have around, and Bite Off with strong energy let it do one-shots on EX Pokemon, so very cool. Darkrai EX was an extremely popular one with the other two, especially Psy. I think Psy played like 4 variants of this or something in the end. Very cool, and Dark Pulse is just a really good scaling based attack, so I do not blame him in the slightest for that. Just very fun to see. Then we have the Servine and Serperior. Servine's noteworthy, probably more noteworthy than the Serperior to be honest, because it's got a paralysis ability on head split when you evolve into it. With Forest Giant Plants and the damage scaling that Serperior could do, it did actually see 1 or 2 tops in the end. It was a pretty fun rogue deck. Zebstrika was an anti-Rayquaza when that was popular, because it let you do 220 damage to the thing, because it was weak to lightning and had a fighting resistance, so there is that. I think it could have seen play coming up actually, because there's a Zebstrika in Lost Thunder that lets you, that it actually sees a lot of play. It's like discard your hand, draw 4, so you could have played this as a split line. Mega Ordinal I'm only noting because it won Worlds in 2016. It was not a good card, let's be honest, but it was just good enough for the anti-Night March, and that's what it was doing, so yep, it's there. Bisharp was the other thing that Rainbow Force tended to play for a fair bit. I forget I think it's because Zoroark ended up seeing play in Rainbow Force is why they stopped seeing play there. Sometimes Magearna as well as a counter thing down the bottom. So Bishop ended up being a bit difficult to fit with a dual typing, but Retaliate type attacks almost always see play, so it was good. Genesect DX was good at the time of release because Drive Change was pretty strong to have around in the metal decks, and when you could accelerate energy from the discard to it, it was pretty good. Got outclassed later on though, to be honest with you, so yeah. Delphox I'm noting because I love discard, especially with a break as well. When Fates Collide first came out and we had access to the Mystical Fire Delphox as well to draw until you had 6, this was such a cool deck to play, and yeah, it was amazingly strong actually once you got it going, and it wasn't that difficult to get going. So yeah, I loved it. Talonflame dropped off pretty hard, even Greninja deck stopped playing it, but Gale Wings is a really strong ability if you start with it in the right type of deck. It's just most decks play too many basics for this now, so yeah, it doesn't really see play anymore. Meowstic, noting because of the Shadow Ear ability, this is actually very similar to the Banette GX that has just come out, and could sometimes matter. You know, placing a specific counter lets you use like Veltol Break or the Azelf for stuff there, so could have been good. Tyrantrum was only playable with Bronzong Metal Links, so when that rotated this kind of went as well, but Dragon Impact was exceptionally powerful at that time. Double Dragon Energy was also available, so really cool card at that stage. Holucha was seen with the Gardevoir, Despair Ray, in order to force the opponent to switch. Sometimes you just couldn't hit what was in the active, so you just wanted to get them away, and then you discard this with Despair Ray, all is good. The Carbinks are all very strong. Safeguard in particular was really good when this first came out. Later on, Energy Keeper ended up being pretty good to prevent Crushing Hammers and stuff from discarding your energy in decks like Zygarde, and even Buzzwole played this a bit. And then the Carbink Break could still see play at that stage to accelerate energy to your fighting type Pokemon as well, so pretty strong. Phantom is a legacy thing. I'm not putting the Trevenant in here because it never really saw play. Nervous Seed just wasn't that good. But the Ascension Phantom was great for the item locking one in XY base set, and Trevenant Break was also very, very powerful at that time as well. Super irritating card to play against as well. Then we have the Yveltals. Fright Knight did see a decent amount of play for a fair while. It did prevent the tools from having any effects, so Float Stones couldn't get the opponent out, which was pretty funky to note. And yeah, when EXs were big, Pitch Black Spear was very strong. And then we have, of course, the Oblivion Wing, like I said. Should have put this in meta, but messed up a bit there. Doesn't really matter. It still saw play up until the end as well. This kind of attack is just very, very powerful. What can we say? Yveltal EX finally rotates as well. This thing has been in standard since the dawn of time, it feels like. You know, XY base set, I think it maybe had one set where it wasn't legal. I'm not even convinced that was true. This thing is just like it, yeah, printed for far, far too long. And yeah, it tapered off by the end of the generation and whatnot, but you could still play it now if you really wanted to. Evil Ball is still objectively a disgusting attack, so yeah, very, very strong. Zygarde, we actually get a Dragon-type version of this, which has Rumble, but I think its second attack was a bit harder to use, so whatever. Yeah, this saw play at the time because blocking Retreat was pretty strong, and it's a single prizer for the fighting type stuff. That was nice. The EX is also here because this did see some play at the time, mostly with Vileplume though. Didn't really have as much success as Pepper would have liked by itself, so yeah. But still, it was the last. I think this might actually be the last Pokemon that has 3 regular attacks on it, because that basically has not happened since Gen 6. Like, we have GXs, of course, with GX attacks and stuff, but I'm talking about ones you can use all the time. And yeah, this might be the last one. Kind of depressing, really. Hooper was... I think I did see this in one of the Worlds decks as well. Probably Malamar, but yeah, I think I did see this, because Hyperspace Punch is just a good attack to have for 1 colorless energy. This was played by me in my big spread deck with Azelf and stuff at the end of last rotation before Fortress went away. So yeah, pretty good. And then the Hooper EX was very strong, not just for the Rayquaza deck when it first came out, but also God of War Despair Ray. This was the main thing that you would use for it at that point, so super good card. Magearna was an anti-Rainbow Force card because it did more damage for each different type of Pokemon the opponent had in play on their bench, so with it hitting Metal Weakness as well, if you were very worried about that deck, and honestly, it was pretty strong, being able to one-shot everything at that time. Kind of worth it. And then finally, we have Magearna EX with its Mystic Heart ability, preventing your opponent's effects of attacks done to your Pokemon with Metal Energy attached. Soul Blaster actually was sort of useful as well, because it did let you one-shot God of War EX, so it did have a little bit of utility as far as the attack goes as well, but it was mostly for the ability, because sometimes effects of attacks really were that sort of devastating. It's very rare, but there are times where it's just like put damage counters down instead of put damage gets blocked, or paralysis or something gets blocked, and you're suddenly very happy that you have this thing in play. If you're playing a metal deck, it's always a consideration. And that, I think, is it. There's probably cards in here that we could have spoken on, but once again, this has been like an extremely long process to even find the relevant stuff in here. So if I've missed anything, let me know down below. But I think we can leave it at that. Thank you very much for sticking with us here and learning a fair bit about what we have in our little rotation pool over here. Sun and Moon is going to be, Sun and Moon On is going to be a very different experience for quite a while, because we do mostly just lose our best supporter cards. We have Cynthia still, and Lily's actually going to see a ton of play now, but yeah, no more Sycamore. Decks are going to have to get built pretty differently from here on out. No more Bridget too. That one's going to be another one that people are going to miss. But yeah, hopefully with the gigantic sets that are coming out though, we will have plenty of stuff that we want to do and plenty of good ways to build the decks anyway. So thank you very much for listening, and until next time, take care.